Hello there, how's it going? This is the first video for chapter 4, working with a list. And in this video, we are going to introduce the concept of a loop. A loop is a very important and slightly intermediate topic of programming. So when you learn loop, you are actually learning something a little more advanced, something that you can actually use in real life. So before we write code for loop, we need to understand what a loop is, right? What is a loop? Well, loop is a feature in every programming language that allows us to repeat code. That's the idea. You can write code one time and you can repeat it as many times as you want. That's the basic idea. So to give you an example, let's say you have images you want to download. You can write the code for downloading images once, and then you can loop that. You can loop that code to download multiple images. Or if you want to delete multiple files, you can write code for deleting one file, and you can loop that code for multiple files. The idea is you only need to give your computer instructions once. In real life, if you have to repeat a task, you need to do the same amount of work. It doesn't matter if you do the task once or if you do the same task 100 times. If you do the same task 100 times, you will need to do 10 times more work. But for computer, you only need to tell the computer what to do once, and then your computer can repeat it using a loop. That's the basic idea. Now there are two kinds of loop. One is called while loop, the other one is called for loop. And in this video we are going to talk about for loop. The purpose of for loop is to use a list. So you can apply the same operation on all items on a list using a for loop. That's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is that we won't cover in this video, but the other thing you can do is repeat a piece of code x times repeat a piece of code x times. So if you have hello world, for example, if you want to run it 10 times, you will need to copy and paste it 10 times. But with a loop, you can tell your computer repeat 10 times, and then you can do print hello world. You are writing it once and you are telling your computer to repeat it. So the top part is actually the loop. This is what we call the loop. Now that's the most basic introduction. Now let's go ahead and start writing some code, and so I can explain a little more. So first let's create a file called magicians.py and and let's open that file, magicians.py. Now we have a list of magicians. Alice, David, Carolina. Now, right now we are learning looping through a list. So before we learn how to loop, let's see how to print each name in the list. So if you want to print each name, you will need to access them individually, right? Like this. And let's run our code. And we got the names. Now, right now we only had 3 names, so we could access them. However, if you had 100 names or maybe 1,000 and you wanted to print them, it wouldn't be feasible to index them one by one. The idea of looping through a list is doing the same operation on every item in a list. For example, if I wanted to print all items, I will create a loop. I will create a loop for magician. In magicians, I can print magician. Now that's the code for looping. I'm going to remove the indexing code and let's run our code again. Python magicians.py. We got the same result. Now this is a loop. This is a loop. Now we can take a screenshot of it and I can talk a lot more about it. For magician, in magicians, so let me scroll and paste the image. That's our loop, and you need to understand what each part means. The for is the keyword. This tells Python that we are creating a for loop, so that's easy. And at the end is the list. It's the list that we want to run the for loop on. I think that's fair enough. For means create a for loop, and the name of the list that we want to run the for loop on. Now here is a little confusing part. What does this mean? What does this mean? Well, here magician is a dummy variable. We call it a dummy variable. We are telling Python, hey, give me the items of magicians in magician one at a time, and then I will print it. So to explain it, let's see what happens line by line. Let's see what happens line by line. First, Python actually sees this line, right? Python runs from top to bottom. First, it will see this line and it will know this is a for loop. Because, as I said, this is a for keyword and this is the name of the list that we want to run the for loop on. Now, the magicians were Alice, David, and Carolina. Now, as many items you are, that many times your for loop will run. That should make sense because it runs on every item. There are 3 items, so it will run 3 times. Now what happens? We create a variable. Now the name of our variable is our own choice. We can name it anything we want. We are calling it magician. First it will point to Alice, and then we will run the code, So let me remove this. And it will run the code inside the loop. What does the code do? It prints the magician. That's how we get Alice. And once we are done with the code, right now there's only one line. You can have as many lines as you want. We go back to the top, and magician is set to David. And then we run the code again. Print. And after we are done with all of the lines, there's only one line right now, but it could be as many lines as you want. Then we go back to the top, and then we point to Carolina. And then finally we will print it. So, and now magician would be Carolina. And as you can see, the list is complete. So we will be out of the loop. you'll be out of the loop. That's the basic idea. So let me go back to our screen and I can do out of the loop here, out of the loop, and we can clear and we can run our code magicians.py, and we got out of the loop. Now you see this indentation, it tells us what is in the code, what is in the loop, what needs to be repeated. And there's also this colon sign that I think I forgot to mention. This is also very important. This is part of the syntax in Python. We start with the for keyword and then we end with a colon. And indentation, here we call it indentation. This is important. This tells us the print is inside our for loop. That's the idea. Now, as I said, magician is our own choosing. It's a dummy keyword, it's a dummy variable that we can name anything we want. The purpose is to get each item of the list into this variable. So for example, I can call it A. For A in magicians, give me each item. It will give me Alice, David, Carolina. Let's run it. You can call it anything you want, but it's better to use a name that makes sense. So each item in the magicians list is a magician, so we are calling it magician. Out of the loop. Now if I indent this line mistakenly, you can imagine what would happen. It would print the name of each magician, Alice. First of all, it will begin with Alice and then it will run out of the loop. And then it will go back to the top. It will see David. It will print David. It will print out of the loop. And it will go back to the top. It will print Carolina. And then it will print out of the loop. So this is a common mistake, common indentation mistake that students make. So that's indentation actually tells us what's inside the loop and what's outside the loop. Now you see out of the loop printed multiple times. We don't want that. I hope it all makes sense. Obviously the first time you will look at it, it will not make clear sense, but that's the basic idea. Now let's see what we can do with a for loop. For now we will just be printing to make things easier, but as I said, there could be any code in the for loop. So we have a slightly advanced print. So here we have an f string where we are doing magician.title. That was a great trick. Now it will not just print the name, but actually a message to each magician. Python magicians.py. Alice, that was a great trick. David, that was a great trick. Carolina, that was a great trick. Now you can put another print. Let's do that. Just to show you that you can write as many lines of code as you want. I can't wait to see your next trick. Now again magician.title, and let's run the code. Yep, there is also a \n. Now it's up to you if you want a \n or an empty print. They do the same thing. It's for a new line. Python magicians.py. Alice, that was a great trick. I can't wait to see your next trick, Alice. David, that was a great trick. I can't wait to see your next trick, David, and so on for every item in the loop. Now isn't that amazing? Right now there are only 3 items. If there were 100 items, your screen would be full of prints. With just 3 lines of code. As a matter of fact, you can avoid this print and use \n to reduce your number of lines. Now we have doing something after a loop. What happens once a for loop finished executing? Usually you will want to summarize a block of output or move on to other work that your program must accomplish. Any lines of code that after the for loop that are not indented are executed once without repetition. Yes, only this is for loop. Once Python gets in the for loop, it will repeat this code and then we will get out of it. Before learning for loop, Python was running each line one at a time, top to bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But when it gets to the for loop, it actually repeats the code. So these two lines are repeated depending on how many items are in the list. And then after we have finished executing on all items, then we go down. Then we go down and run the rest of the code until all of the lines are finished. Now let's write a thank you note. Let's write a thank you note. Thank you everyone. That was a great magic show. And let's run it and see magicians.py. Thank you everyone, that was a great magic show. No, so I think this is it for this video, for the introduction, and in the next one we can talk about a little more about for loops and a little more things what we can do about for loops. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one.